Hello, everybody. It's Mark Stelzner with IAA. I hope you, your families, and yours are staying safe and healthy under the current environment. One of the things we wanted to do is start sharing free resources on some of the more common questions that we're receiving from our clients all around the world. And today's discussion is going to be around contract negotiations, how you can renegotiate your HR service provider contracts given the unprecedented considerations under COVID-19. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in. Unfortunately, many employers of all shapes and sizes are facing unprecedented modifications to their employee populations, be it reductions in force, furloughs and closures, in some instances divestitures and spinoffs, obviously changes to the dynamic nature of their contingent workers, and in some notable cases, even population increases or geographic realignment where folks are redeploying the existing resources to meet the demand in certain markets such as healthcare, logistics, supply chain, etc. So all of these under this new reality are what we would refer to as catalysts for renegotiation. It's an overt acknowledgement of the fact that our workforces are changing. And because the population size, the population count, the population geography is a key attribute toward the payment of your current contracts to your HR service providers, we believe that it is time to have open, engaging conversations with those partners who are truly an extension of your firm to represent to the best of your ability what you believe your current population looks like and the time horizon for modifications. We know that population count is not the only attribute, but we do believe that if you engage with your account managers, obviously virtually, schedule a session, have an honest and open dialogue, you're going to find that the partners are going to meet you exactly where you are today by recognizing the unfortunate circumstances that many employers find themselves in, as well in some instances, the fact that the population is quite fluid and we're certainly looking week over week or month over month how certain populations may bounce back in certain industries. So the time for that conversation is now. And when we think about how we're going to have that conversation, we have to start by preparing ourselves internally. We know that there is so much divided attention right now, and we know unfortunately that many employers that have looked at population reductions as the biggest impact to bringing down their cost of service when there are such significant financial headwinds. We believe it's time to also start looking externally at those service providers who are powering every facet of the employee life cycle. So when we talk about how you rapidly assess the opportunities for your particular organization, we want to start with some basic preparation, which includes locating your agreements and your order forms. This may take more time and may be more challenging than you might think, but let's make sure that we have a common inventory and a common repository for all contracts, for all service providers, and of course all of the active order forms that make up the representation of your full life cycle for your population today across talent acquisition, talent management, core HR, payroll, total rewards, and any subservice therein. Understand, of course, your billing mechanics and your metrics. Are you paying based on utilization? That may not require so much renegotiation because your utilization rates may be ebbing or flowing. What's the expiration date? What's your contract term length? What's the notice mechanism if in fact you want to make a modification? Is it on auto renewal? Is it 6 months, 9 months, 3 months? What is your renewal life cycle? And what is the fiscal year for your downstream service providers as well to understand what kind of latitude or incentives they may have to negotiate and bring a new offer to the table. And again, as we talked about earlier, this starts with scheduling a call with your account executive to really bring up the current agreement, go through the current terms and conditions, and understand where you might have latitude or where you are in your current life cycle. The advanced form of preparation requires a bit more time and energy, which is really looking into the current makeup of your workforce. Employee counts. So in some of these contracts, they are per employee per month. In others, they are per employee per year. In others, they are transactionally based. But a key metric is understanding your actual population in whatever term in which that population would be measured. So given right now, many have gone through significant reductions or furloughs, you should really look at also the tranches such as the mins or maxes. So even if you're on a per employee per month contract that is based on utilization, your negotiation in your original agreement may start with mins or maxes. So let's say you're a 10,000 person organization. Your min and max might be plus or minus 10% or 20% of your current population, where you have either a discount for more population per transaction or an increased cost per population for a lower tranche. However, there's typically to be negotiated or negotiated as needed language that basically allows you to approach your service provider that if you've had a massive swing in growth or a massive swing in reduction of your population, there is language to permit a renegotiation. Now, understandably, as you engage with your service providers, the cost per transaction, per unit, per employee may actually go up as your population shrinks because they're obviously trying to incent you to have a larger population and procure more of their services. However, in terms of total cost of ownership, as you're looking at cost reduction strategies right now, which certainly I understand that everyone would be, you might want to go and look at whether those floors are in fact pre-negotiated or whether you have to have broader tranches. A tranche, think of it as a population jump. It might be 1,000 to 2,000, 2,000 to 5,000, 5,000 to 10,000. It might be for smaller organizations, 10 to 20, 21 to 50, 50 to 100, 51 to 100, etc. We also have to look at all the populations in terms of classification. Although some of your contracts may say total employee regardless of type, others may have a different metric that they measure depending on your full-time, your part-time, your seasonal, and even to some respects, your contingent workforce. So if you're representing in your HR technology or HR service provider contracts today a contingent workforce, we also know that some are leaning more on contingent right now to dynamically assemble talent where needed versus their full-time equivalents. And this notion of full service equivalents, looking at FTEs as a metric that goes beyond just your total numbers, regardless of classification, is another area where you should have your data ready. Where we have known increases or decreases, where we have some prediction on a month-by-month or quarter-by-quarter basis, where even under the best scenario, you can see where your population may come back, or if you're growing, where you might see a temporary spike. The other thing to bring to the table when you're talking to your service providers is any predictive modeling that you've done to basically say, listen, we believe we have a 3-month period where we would like to negotiate a lower cost or a lower population. Or if you're experiencing a temporary spike in your population, we believe we have the equivalent of a seasonal spike under COVID-19, and therefore we'd want to negotiate a lower cost, not necessarily an annualized cost. And again, how do you engage and reestablish a contractual structure that recognizes that month over month, and in some cases week over week, your populations may be shifting. Your volumetrics and your consumption of those downstream service provider services may be shifting. Now, one of the things we have to recognize is service providers are businesses as well, and we don't want to be punitive in terms of negatively impacting their population, negatively impacting their profitability. So when we think about the give to get in this conversation, certainly what you should be prepared for is to potentially extend your contract beyond the current termination. So let's say by virtue of example that your contract was scheduled to end at the end of 2021. When you engage this conversation with your account executive, it's helpful to say, listen, are you willing to give them until 2022 or 2023 in return for perhaps a lower negotiated service agreement for what you and the market may generally recognize as a temporary pain point or temporary blip? So again, think about what you can give to that service provider in terms of a longer contract, reestablishing the term and termination clauses, but also, of course, recognizing the fact that you may not need to consume as much of their services or technology at this particular moment in time. The nuclear option, sort of the last course that I think some people are certainly entertaining, is the idea of invoking force majeure given COVID-19. We looked at the National Law Review. They published a great article. You can see the URL, or certainly reach out to me if you're having trouble reading that. What's the expert's view on invoking force majeure under COVID-19 right now? Really, what you have to do is engage either internal or external counsel to look at the rights, the remedies, the requirements in which you could invoke force majeure, And in your particular instance, what are the notice requirements and deadlines? Again, all of this should exist in the contractual language that you have with every single one of your service providers. So it may be helpful to just extract the appropriate terms and conditions, keep this in your back pocket, and before you invoke force majeure, how do you assess and document any alternatives for performance, such as what we've suggested in the prior materials, which is really engaging in open, honest dialogue, acknowledging the fact that the business conditions have changed, and really trying to have an open and honest conversation about where the service provider can meet you. If there are consequences associated with a force majeure event, you have to think about breach, you have to think about default, you have to think about recording requirements, if in fact you're a public entity. And what you really want to do, which you've heard me say again and again here, is you want to communicate with your partners as early as possible in this process. And again, keep very good documentation internally of the time of the conversation, the nature of the conversation, the discussion of the conversation, and only as a last course potentially pursue force majeure. And again, we would encourage you to seek advice of counsel, either internal or external counsel, if you feel that unfortunately your business conditions are so dire that force majeure may need to be invoked in your contractual conditions. We want to keep this conversation going. This is the first of many different series of events that we're going to provide. As you can imagine, we work with employers of all shapes and sizes. Our clients range from 3,000 employees to 500,000 employees. We believe we can give of our time and expertise. So we have a new page on our website. If you go to www.ia-hr.com/resources, you'll find office hours. If you want to schedule time to talk to me about your specific circumstances associated with contractual negotiations, reach out. We also have the whole team's calendar there. So you can schedule time, no cost. Please don't sell to us, of course. We're looking to provide advice and guidance to those in need, but we're also going to have free IA resources, third-party content, etc. Also, all my contact information is here. I started this firm 14 years ago with the belief that we could bring better value, we could change the nature of consulting services, and part of it is offering our intellectual property, what we're seeing, the kind of advice and guidance that we offer to our paying clients, to the market at large. So we hope this has been a valuable use of your time. We encourage you to reach out if you have any questions. First and foremost, and lastly, I will say we wish you well. We want your families to stay safe and healthy. We want to see your businesses thrive. If we can help in any way possible, please don't hesitate to reach out. Have a wonderful day. I look forward to hearing from you soon.